now, and we're going to start covering now the substance of the research part of today. You've gone through your course materials for Module 1, by example, Chapter 1, your text, your study guide, and you keep running across the different treaties, cases, letter rulings, and so forth, articles. The first thing you need to know is, where do I look? During the process of the next 15 weeks of this course, we're primarily going to be using the search proprietary databases. That's your Lexis, your Westlaw. More importantly, that's your tax analysts, your IBFD, your Checkpoint, your CCH, your Oceana, now Oxford, and other proprietary databases that have excellent research. For China, we'll be looking at the China Law Info that translates all of their treaties and other laws from Mandarin into English side by side. We'll be looking at Byrnes for the UK, and being able to access treaty-based cases there. But we'll also be looking at, as you see on your screen now, the national tax websites, generally from the Revenue Authority or some other entity in government or universities that contain all, like, by example, the tax treaties, and maybe some cases, obviously in the native language, in the official languages of that country. So we'll secondarily be seeing where we can duplicate the information in the first instance, that being the proprietary databases, with free resources in the second instance, that being web-based, internet-based resources, generally government resources, sometimes university. Now, the first place to be looking is your Proxy Server. So yesterday in orientation lecture, we covered the Proxy Server. I'm going to repeat the Proxy Server throughout this week. In every lecture, ask the other teachers to, like Robert Blink's lecture tomorrow for Tax 1, to make sure that all the new students understand where we're looking. So the link is, and we discovered yesterday, you must type in the http:// You must type that in. You cannot just type in easy proxy. So http:// I've circled it up on your screen, and then you type easyproxy.tjsl.edu:2048. You see that on your screen above with the login. That link will be under your web links by tonight. I think it already is, but if it's not, it will certainly be in your web links in every course, so that all you do is click on the link. If you do not have your username yet, I think everybody has their username, but if you don't have your username, all you got to do is email help@tjsl.edu. help@tjsl.edu. And they will send you your username and your password. You can change your password once you're inside, or you can leave it the same. It doesn't matter. Your username will be your email address without the and tjsl@tjsl.edu part. It won't include that part. So that will be your username. Once you go into your Proxy Server, you will automatically come to your database page. So where are my databases? Library, research databases. Library goes to research databases. If you want to view the class lectures, you'd go up to class lectures, the ones that are recorded. But you don't have to worry The links will be put under your web links for each class lecture that's recorded and put onto the website. So you don't have to go search for class lectures anymore. This is a new improved service. We'll put each lecture that's recorded, we will put under your web links so you can just simply click on it and go straight there instead of searching amongst the hundreds of lectures. Okay, today we're going to focus on 3 databases for our tax treaties. Three databases for our tax treaties. 1, we're going to look at Tax Analyst, because Tax Analyst has the best user interface for tax treaties research. Number 2, we're going to look at IBFD. And finally, number 3, we're going to look at CCH. It doesn't mean that we're not going to look at Oecd later or Checkpoint and the other services. Just today we're going to focus on those 3 services. CCH is going to have materials for this program that you're going to need to know about for this course, the Fogel book. IBFD is going to have cases, but Tax Analyst is going to have the updated treaties with good articles explaining the treaties as well as some cases. So we're going to look at Tax Analyst first. To look at Tax Analyst, I clicked on Tax International Tax link and it just scrolled me down the 60+ databases here on the website, and I look for T for Tax Analyst. I'm just going to click on it. There's no login required, no password required. If I'm on the Proxy Server, it's an automatic access. And here under Tax Analyst, for purposes of today, worldwide tax treaties. For looking up articles on tax treaties, I'm going to want to use Worldwide Tax Daily. But for looking up the actual tax treaties, Worldwide Tax Treaties. I'm going to click on Worldwide Tax Treaties. Now, observe the left-hand menu. For purposes of your study, you're going to be referring a lot to model conventions. So I'm putting that as number 1. Model conventions. Everyone should see that on the left-hand side of the screen. I'm going to wait until that's on my student screen. I don't see it on my student screen yet. There it is. Okay. Model conventions. Number 2 is the treaties themselves. So you'll see on your screen in a moment, number 2, the treaties. I've drawn an arrow to that link. Now, Tax Analyst has a lot of cool other services. By example, Tax Analyst has our compare treaty articles. I'm underlining that, compare treaty articles. Tax Analyst has compare rates. It has planning and analysis. But for purposes of our study in this first part of the program, in the first 6 weeks, 6 modules, primarily you're going to be using number 1, model conventions, number 2, treaties. So I'm going to go ahead and link on model conventions. And then we see the OECD model convention, which will be referred to many times. If you're new in the program and you're not sure what the OECD is, don't worry, that gets explained to you in class. And it's covered in Thesis 1. So we have our OECD model conventions, and we have the latest version from approved on July in 2008 this year. You'll also be referring to later on in the course, when Marshall Langer's talking, model agreement on exchange of information on tax matters. You're going to see that down under administrative assistance. Marshall Langer will also be teaching about mutual assistance for recovery of tax claims. Estate inheritance and gifts, that's covered in your international estate planning course and other courses. That's not covered in tax treaties. That's covered in estate and gift type courses. Secondly, you got your United Nations, and thirdly, you have your U.S. model tax conventions. That doesn't mean that there isn't a Dutch model tax convention. So in class, we may be looking at the Netherlands preferred model, which just deals with certain specifics to their tax code. But these are the primary models referred to in literature and worldwide and in study and by the OECD reports and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Model Tax Convention on Income and Capital condensed version. I'm circling what I'm clicking on so that we can see what it actually looks like. I'm going to point out something that I think is important. Okay, I can download the convention. We see the PDF at the top of the screen. We'll see it shortly. I am circling that PDF for you, so you'll see it shortly. What I want to point out here is something in red. Editor's note. You're going to see the editor's note, so I'm circling it to make sure that this is in particular important to those of you doing research papers dealing with historical development. The editor's note says, the historical notes not reproduced in this version can be found under each article of the OECD Model Tax Convention updated as of 2005, which is included in this database. So if you want to follow the history of the development of an article, by example, the permanent establishment article, definition article, Article 5, or the allocation of profits article, Article 7, you would go to the 2005 version, and in that version will be redlined. We'll have the editor's notes bringing it up to date to 2008, so you can follow annually the historical evolution of that article today. That's very interesting for people who are doing two things. One, academic, you're writing a paper on a historical analysis. Two, professional. If you are with clients addressing a tax issue from 2005 between two countries that are based on the OECD model, or when the courts look at OECD model for persuasive analysis, and we'll get into all that later in the course. But if you are, well, then you need to look at the analysis that the OECD applied in 2005. And we'll get into which version of the OECD model convention the courts use. We'll get into that in class. Do they use 2008? Do they use 2005? Do they what? But you need to be aware of and to know where to find the analysis of 2005 in the commentary and in the actual treaty. You will not find that in the 2008 model. You'll find that in the previous models, i.e. in this database, and then you can follow the editor's notes as it historically annotates, as it historically evolves. So professionally, this is important. Academically, for those of you doing historical research, evolutionary research, it's also important. Okay. Now, non-member country positions on the model convention. Countries that are not members of the OECD have in the last, I don't even know now, 5 years, 6 years, ever since the tax competition reports, that's almost 10 years, have been invited to the important trading countries. In South Africa, which is not the most important trading country, but it comments, but China, India being the big ones, Brazil, Russia, BRIC countries, BRIC, B-R-I-C, Brazil, Russia, India, China, the BRIC countries, but as offshore countries and so forth, they get to put in their 2 cents. So they're not members of the OECD, but they're important trade countries. Maybe it's financial trade, capital, moving across borders trade, so that you have a one-stop shop of where to look at how countries view certain articles and the interpretation of certain articles. You haven't studied the course yet, so you may not understand what I'm talking about in this context. So to make it more understandable, I'll click on one of these so that we can understand what I'm saying. Non-member countries' positions on Article 5. Article 5 is the definition of permanent establishment. So we will see the countries that are not members of the OECD are there. Position on Article 5. Permanent establishment and its commentary. You'll see this on your screen in a moment. Okay. I'm just going to circle the beginning so that paragraph 2 of Article 5, so that you can see what I'm talking about. In paragraph 2 of Article 5, it says, in paragraph 2, in addition to the extraction of, we're going to be looking at interpretation of tax treaties, and we're going to be looking very closely at the words and then the phrases, clauses used in tax treaties. And I have a real unique way of approaching that process to make it understandable, using almost like a statutory interpretation approach. I wish my lectures had taped last year on that, some of them, but most didn't, because I was on fire last year. But and we'll be applying, of course, Michael Edwards Kerr's approach and then other people's approach, like Vogel, on how to interpret tax treaties. But the extraction of, I've circled that on my screen. I'm just waiting for it to appear on my student screen so that I know you're looking at the same thing I'm looking at. It says Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Gabon, Ivory Coast, Morocco, and it's this list of countries. Then it says, reserve the right to refer to okay, it's appeared on your screen now. And you'll see I've circled two parts. The extraction of, these countries reserve the right to refer to the exploration for such resources. So this group of countries that are not OECD members are telling the world, the OECD is kind of like a UN body, call it. It's not, but we'll just, for purposes of tax, it is. They're telling the world that they're placing the words, or at least their negotiation stance is that the words the extraction of are replaced with the words exploration for. They may not get their way in a treaty negotiation, by example, with the United States, but this is where their negotiation stance starts. I'm just showing you that as an example of non-member countries and how it applies to an actual model treaty here in the OECD. Kazakhstan 6.2 under paragraph 2. Mark LaRue says replaced or added to. In this case, it wouldn't matter, but added to. Exploration of will include, yeah, it's added to. It's plus, added to. It's exploration and, of course, also extraction. These countries are broadening the scope, the jurisdictional scope of what's allowed to tax. They're broadening the scope because obviously with extraction industry resources, extraction industry of natural resources, you may be exploring for 10 years. And exploring, common sense will tell you that, well, that just means you're building up losses because there's no income. Well, some countries say, well, actually there is income because you have to allocate service fees to the exploration process. And so you may be taking losses back home because this is a branch operation, or you have some kind of international amalgamation of your accounts. However, for our local country, I'm giving you an example like Russia or Morocco or whatever, and these are also going to be water, off the coast. For their purposes, they may transfer price some kind of cost plus analysis so that there is an income to be taxed even for the exploration for the natural resources. Now, obviously, with the extraction of, there's going to be tax. Generally speaking, in almost every case I can actually think of, but I haven't studied natural resource extraction in a while, but we will have Aaron talk about it, who is a tax counsel from BP, he's now over at Tyco. But generally speaking, most countries have a special tax regime that apply to extraction of natural resources anyway. So you're not under the corporate tax regime. You're under a special license regime because you must contract with the government to be allowed to to pull out the resources from the ground, and so you have a special tax regime anyway. So having a tax treaty article is somewhat of a it's almost not necessary, because you can't just go in and dig. So the countries are making you agree to certain royalty arrangements with the local government regardless. Okay, so I've showed you an example of these countries just so you understand what the non-member countries' positions like. Now, the other thing I want to show you are the commentaries. Michael Edwards Kerr, we're not going to discuss what commentaries are today, it's just so you can find them. There's number 1 and there's number 2. Number 1 is the convention itself. We call that a double tax agreement. Now, for purposes of the OECD model, or the US model, the UN model, they're called the model. But usually we're referring to them as DTA, double tax agreement, DTA, double tax agreement. That's the actual treaty, or the actual model. The second part for the OECD is the commentary. The commentary is the unanimously agreed analysis of the article and the model. So we just looked at Article 5 from the point of view of the non-member countries. Now I'm clicking on the commentary for Article 5 for the member countries, for the OECD countries. And this is what they have unanimously agreed to. If they have not unanimously agreed to it, two things occur. Either one, it's not here, so we don't need to discuss it, or number two, at the end of the article, they have stated, and we'll see that momentarily, while we agree in general with the way it's written, we have certain reservations. And then the countries list their particular reservations that are based on their particular tax situation in their country. But they don't want to impose their tax situation upon everybody in the world. They just have a particular situation, and thus they have to they want to make the world aware of it. So here's one. I'm going to circle it now. Portugal. Oh, here's a lot. Spain, Germany, Italy, Portugal. Okay. So reservations on the article we see below, and we see reservations on particular from previous years above. You'll see this on your screen in a moment. I'm just circling particular parts of this. So the reservations on the article are OECD member by OECD member stating, as in general, we like the article. However, based on our particular situation at home, everyone needs to be aware, i.e. all the other OECD members in the world, need to be aware that our negotiation stance is starting here. That does not mean, we'll look at this later in the course, that does not mean that this is the inevitable conclusion of that country's position after the treaty is signed. This is the negotiation stance of that treaty going into the negotiation to sign a treaty with another country. So everyone understand it? This is the negotiation position, not the final position after the treaty is signed. Once the treaty is signed, then we know the final position. However, the reservations help us understand the analysis that the treaty negotiators for that Treasury Department, that Ministry of Finance Department, or that Department of Trade for that country, their mechanism, their thought process for how they got to their final position in the negotiation process. We need to be aware of these reservations to understand how the final conclusion came about. The reservations are also important for those of you doing academic research for the evolution of a treaty article for that particular country, for a particular treaty. Okay. This was the mock conventions. The second part are the treaties themselves. The treaties themselves. I've just clicked on what I had circled as number 2 before, treaties. Here we have a list of all the countries and jurisdictions in the world. I'm going to usually refer to them as countries, but we understand some of these are jurisdictions, some of these are trade blocs. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, it's a trade bloc, it's not a country, it's not a jurisdiction. The Arab Economic Unity Council is a trade bloc. The Arab Maghreb Union is a trade bloc, it's not a country or jurisdiction. Anguilla is a jurisdiction. It is a colony, a overseas territory of the United Kingdom. It is not a country. More on that in your thesis 1 and in your offshore course in spring. Okay. Some of these places no longer exist, like Bechuanaland, Basutoland. But historically, Botswana. But their treaties may still be enforced, or, if nothing else, for those of you who are doing academic research, they may be interesting. I'm going to scroll down to, by example, let's do China. People's Republic of China, PRC. I've clicked on it, and these are all the treaties for the People's Republic of China going down the list. They may not all be enforced. We've got to go look at the treaties themselves. Let's go look at People's Republic of China and Cuba. Anna, you have a meeting in the Capitol. That's cool. I'm taping this. This will all be put up tomorrow with a link in the classroom. Probably tomorrow afternoon, there'll be a link in the links under Tax Treaties course. So China, Cuba. Here we have the 2001 Income Tax Agreement of China and Cuba. I'm going to click on the agreement. It's going to open in a separate window. And the relevant parts of this agreement are: is it in force? Yes, it says status in force. When did it become effective? 2004. When did it join in force? October 17th, 2003. Wait, what does that mean? We just got two different concepts. We'll discuss that in class, but just for a quick one. In force, it became effective between the two countries in terms of being signed. But for the effective statute, what tax years did it start applying to? The tax years it started to apply to are are 2001, January 1st, 2004, all the way until the current, because it's in force right now. Here is the treaty of PRC and Cuba. You should see this on your screen. I'm going to go back up to a different treaty now. We have the whole treaty here, and if we scroll all the way down, we'll see all the different articles, or I can link on the left-hand side of the menu, which you see with the little blue links by article. But let's go look at a more interesting treaty. Not that PRC in Cuba is not an interesting treaty, but I want to go look at one that has evolved and changed, where there have been amendments to the treaty. So for that, let's go look at, by example, the Netherlands-USA Treaty. So the Netherlands-United States Treaty, I went and clicked on Netherlands. I could have gone and clicked on United States and then looked for Netherlands under United States, but in comes before U. Now, I have all the treaties, as we see on my screen. You'll see it in a moment. All the treaties between Netherlands and the U.S. going back in history. We have a 1926 shipping agreement, by example. That's interesting for those of you doing historical academic research. It's probably not interesting for those of you doing professional work. So what's my latest treaty? Well, we have a 2007 Competent Authority Agreement. That's not a treaty. We have 2004 Protocol to the 1992 Convention. That's not a treaty. That's a protocol that amends the treaty. So it looks like my latest treaty between the two countries is my Income Tax Convention as amended. I can look at number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is the treaty as it was originally signed. Number 2 is the treaty as it has been amended, and this is where Tax Analyst excels beyond the other services we're going to look at starting next. So number 2, the treaty as amended, is generally speaking where you're going to want to look at professionally, because it's going to have all the updates, and as you see at the top of my screen, I'll circle it in pink for you, has been amended by protocol signed on 1993 and 2004. So, the treaty you're now looking at incorporates the changes by those protocols and other similar agreements. So I don't have to worry about if I'm looking at something that's up to date. This is where Tax Analyst, again, excels. So we're not looking at this treaty today for the specifics. We're just going through the treaty to understand that this is the version with all the changes incorporated into it. So I'm scrolling down the treaty just to show you it's all here. But I could have linked on the left-hand menu to get to the same place, like Director's Fees, Article 17. Okay. With that said, that's Tax Analyst. I pointed out that it has other cool features, planning and analysis, by example. So I've just clicked on the words planning and analysis on the left-hand menu. It has compare treaty articles. It has compare rates and it has court opinions, cases. So as a quickie, planning and analysis, let me scroll down to Netherlands, and you'll see articles from Tax Notes International talking about Dutch treaties. So here's, by example, overview of the Dutch UAE tax treaty, September 10th, 2007. Okay. Then you have court opinions. And so I'm showing you which court opinions that they have under Tax Analyst. By example, Netherlands, court opinions. And I click on Netherlands, and I see that they have these 3 opinions: Norway, they have 2 opinions, and so forth. If I go through all these Canada, I'm just clicking on various ones to show you examples of their court opinions, obviously dealing with treaties. There's another way to look up court opinions on Tax Analyst. It's different from what I'm looking at, and that's to go, and we'll look at that another day. That's only a Thesis 1 subject. Searching for court cases, because they have a lot of other court opinions that aren't listed under this database. I know it, because we've done this research many times. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close out Tax Analyst. I've just shown you some other little functionalities that we cover in other courses. There's 2 more databases we have to look at, IBFD and CCH. In looking at IBFD and CCH, I'm not going to go look at the treaties again. I've done that with Tax Analyst. We're going to look at their specific functionalities that are different than Tax Analyst, that are a reason why you would want to look there. Again, I'm not saying the other databases aren't good and have their own functionalities. We're just looking at that as another class, totally neutral to what databases you use. IBFD and then CCH. I've clicked on IBFD in the center of my screen. No login required. I'm just pointing out where the tax treaty database is, and then we're going to be looking here for tax treaty case law. So I've circled tax treaty database, tax treaty case law. I'm not going to go look at the tax treaties I told you. I'm just going to click on the database to show you what it looks like, the screen. I need to select a country and the other country. So if I want to find a treaty, I've circled it on my screen on the left-hand menu. You'll see it shortly. It says country, and then under it, it says related country. I could select by treaty subject. I could search by treaty status. I can do all this in Tax Analyst also. I didn't use the treaty search function in Tax Analyst. I'm just showing you that this functionality also exists in IBFD. It will also obviously exist in CCH and in every other treaty database like Oceania, Oxford. So you would have to search by country, and like if you were doing PRC China, you would go to choose People's Republic of China, and you would choose your related country, like Cuba, and voila, you would find your treaty. Now, you would also find treaty articles. Articles, the same thing as a Tax Analyst, the articles from the IBFD subscriptions on tax treaties. However, what is going to make Tax Analyst interesting, going back to the original screen, is our tax treaty case law. So, under our course materials, we had different cases. And I want to find cases. I might go to Tax Analyst. I might come here to IBFD. And I would click on Tax Treaty Case Law. It's the same searching as I did before, as in by country, when I was in Tax Analyst. So, under the let's look at cases under, what did I look at last time? Netherlands. So I click on Netherlands, and it's broken down by year. (1939) case, I somehow find this hard to believe, so I'm going to click on that, case unknown. But they have a case from 1939, Dutch, United Kingdom. Okay, so that would be a very old case that they have. Anyway, I doubt that's going to be relevant to anybody searching. Let's go look at something more commonplace, 2007. Here's a case in 2007. And Dutch, it deals with Belgium, Brazil, and Italy. It's a Supreme Court Hoogeraad case. It deals with Articles 23 and 24. And then you get a summary of the facts and court decision. So I'm highlighting that so everyone sees how to do that kind of research. Other relevant cases, and it has a link to another case that was probably referred to, cited in this case. You have the original language of the case, rechtspraak.nl, for those of you who are Dutch-speaking, like Petrus. Or we can download the full text of the decision here on a PDF. So I'll go ahead and click my PDF. And here we get the Dutch version, but there's going to be some kind of English translation here. I just know it. So I'm scrolling down. I'm wrong. There's not an English translation. You just get the brief in the front. A lot of times the IBFD is translating these, maybe because it's 2007, they haven't gotten there yet. But a lot of them will have the original language, and then it will have a unofficial translation by somebody at the IBFD publishing house. So you won't know, you just have to go case by case. Anyway, if we did another one, let's say France. I don't know, let's just 2005. I'll choose randomly the first case of 2005 in France. This is a Court of Appeal in Paris, France, United Kingdom case, dealing with Articles 9, paragraphs 6 and 7, dividend coupons, yada yada. It's a U.S. company, concludes with the UK bank. Okay, you can read the summary of this in court decision on your own. The language of the case is obviously French because it's in France. And so I'll click on the full text decision, and we'll have this in French. And I'm just curious to see if this is translated into English or not. And it is not. This is in the original language, French. So you'll just get the documents in the original language. You'll have a translation in English. Here in the summary of facts, sometimes the cases are translated also in English. Okay. That's why the IBFD is interesting. So you can go look up cases by their country and by their year, as cited, by example, in Michael Edwards Kerr's material, or in other materials such as Klaus Vogel's. Now, the IBFD has magazines and so forth to look up treaty issues. Tax News Service Online, by example. I'll circle it. Bulletin for International Taxation, and so forth. we're not going to cover those today. We're looking at where to find cases. So I'm going to go ahead and close out the IBFD. And our final database to look at is CCH. Tax International Tax, click down, scroll to CCH, International Tax Research. There are two CCHs. The second CCH will be put on your proxy server probably by tomorrow. The second CCH deals with the very specialist tax planning tools of CH, which are very expensive, but we've subscribed to them. But for the normal CCH library, which is appearing on your screen right now, we have 35 concurrent users or more. I don't know, a lot. For the specialist tools, we have like 5 concurrent users. The specialist tools are the planning software, the compliance software that has every tax form from all these countries translated into English. So you have side-by-side natural language and or the local language and the English translation, and other cool little products. Generally speaking, for our course this semester in tax treaties, we're going to be using this database, the general CCH database, and we're going to be using international tax. I'm circling that at the top of my screen. So you click on that tab, and tax treaties and analysis in the center of my screen. Tax treaties and analysis. The two databases we're primarily going to be focusing on: World Tax Treaties, and secondly, Klaus Vogel. That's not to say that we're not going to not be using these other ones. Tax Treaty Withholding Rate Decision Support Tool. CCH Amended Treaties. We have our OECD models. We have U.S. tax withholding on payments to foreign persons, commentary, the impact of community law and tax treaties, and so on. But not for today's purposes. Worldwide tax treaties, it looks the same as the other databases by country. So if, by example, we went down to, let's see, we looked for China and Cuba last time. So, okay, China and Cuba. Here's our China-Cuba tax treaty with citation linked to editor's notes. It's like the tax analyst. I prefer the look and feel of the tax analyst over IBFD, over CCH, over Oceania, over everything else. I prefer the tax analyst look and feel. You may prefer one of the others. That's just personal. I prefer the tax cases and tax analysts, the way they translate them. There's a more full translation than the IBFD, but IBFD has more tax cases than tax analyst does. Now, I'm just showing you here in CCH where the treaties are. You can do that on yourself. The unique part of CCH is our book. In many places in our materials for the tax course, you need to know this, you're going to be referred to this book and other books here on CCH. So now you know where this book is, Double Tax Conventions. Unfortunately, Klaus Vogel, who wrote part of this course, the tax treaties course, so you'll find his materials, they're going to be different from the book because he wrote them. For the course, he died last year, like Walter Diamond. He unfortunately passed. So his work has ended. So we have the vestiges of it here in the course, just like Walter Diamond passed this year. And And so Walter Diamond's last works on the courses are herein. So when you're referred to parts of the book, this is by chapter. So let me go link on something to show you an example. Definitions, Chapter 2, and we'll find Article 5, Permanent Establishment. So let's just look at our general remarks, Section A. So I've clicked on Article 5, Permanent Establishment, General Remarks, Section A, and you'll see Klaus Vogel's personalized commentary on Article 5. And you'll see internal links within his own book here under the CCH. You'll also see cases referred to within this book. I've shown you where to look for cases under the 2 sources, but we're going to look at more sources as the course unfolds. We'll look at, as I said, we're going to also look at 3 sources, internet-based case sources, separate from these proprietary sources that we're looking in now. So, so we have the Klaus Vogel sources in front of us. We see treaties referred to down at the bottom. I've highlighted it like German's Double Tax Convention, DTC. Most people call it DTAs, Double Tax Agreements. Doesn't matter which acronym you use. With Switzerland, well, now you know where to find easily Germany and Switzerland's tax treaties. You can go to Tax Analyst, you can go to IBFD, you can go to CCH, you can go to Oceana, Oxford University Press. You can go to other resources we'll look at as the course unfolds. And let me scroll back to my Tax Treaties and Analysis, just so we can see that there are other databases to link at there in tax treaties. It's not solely and exclusively the ones that we're looking at today. We will also look at CCH number 2, those compliance documents and so forth I was talking about in the planning tools, just like Checkpoint. We'll be looking at Checkpoint's second database that is very expensive, that has its competitive version of compliance tools with the charts and an international tax expert which figures out every potential route between 2 countries using intermediary countries like offshore jurisdictions and so forth. We're going to look at that more primarily in the context of the international tax course, and our treaties course will be looking primarily focused, obviously, on treaties. You'll see a lot of links on top of your screen, wealth management, financial, okay, those are different courses using those materials. Everybody who's a student has access to everything. We only obviously focus on the material specific to the course within a course. But you can go around and play with everything as you have time. The amended treaties, let's look at Netherlands, U.S., because we looked at that under our tax analyst. And it's the same thing as you saw under tax analyst. It includes the changes in the treaty itself. Okay, I'm going to close CCH. I'm going to stop sending my screen. Please ask me any questions that you have. And go ahead and ask me any questions. We've reached the end of the time. And what login do we use for the databases where needed? The login and ID of the 3 we looked at today, Tax Analyst doesn't need one. IBFD doesn't need one. CCH needs one. And the password login is there in the Proxy Server's column. So it's in the middle column. It says login ID, and it tells you what the login ID is. I don't remember it off my head for CCH, but it's there. You just retype it, copy, paste it. Any other questions about the those three we looked at today, where they are, anything about them, about the course materials, about the syllabus for tax treaties? Okay. The final list of people doing tax treaties is under your email options. So anybody who's under email options are the people who are doing this course, and I'm going to look there myself as I'm talking to you. So under email options, I have a list of people. Also have the professors. I see it's Miguel, Renee, James, Petrus. I thought Renee was in the course in fall. Maybe she was in tax planning, and now she's doing this again. Yes, correct. Leave them in Facebook. You should befriend everybody who's in the Diamond group, though. Just go through the participant list in the Diamond group and just befriend everybody. So Lewis is here, James, Mark Onduro from who's head of Kenyan Revenue for International Tax, Nitesh, Michael Rinaldi's the professor, Anna Marie Sanchez is here twice. Michelle van Roon from Switzerland, and Zeming, who is literally sitting here with me right now. There he is. He's a resident student here under the LLM program, residentially. I don't have this class. Find it useful for my thesis one. Yes, that's fine. We invite this. Or I invite all the students to my lectures. Okay.